Hey everybody, my name is Eric and welcome to part 2 of Subsweek in the month of August as we celebrate 10 years of the pagan perspective. This week our question comes from Freedom Fighter, who always asks the most evocative questions, and they're talking about learning from religious history. So what they want to know is, what can paganism learn from the history of various or specific world religions, so we do not repeat the mistakes of the past and become and grow into a better religion in general? Now this is a really interesting question, but I do need to dismantle some semantics before we can actually go into it. Sorry, there's a school field trip not too far over there, so making a bit of noise, I don't know if you can hear it. So there's a couple of semantics that we need to go over here. So pagan, or neo-pagan, is an umbrella term. It encompasses a lot of different religions, and it's not as though like it's a single religious movement. Like, we don't have a board, a body, we don't have anybody who speaks for us collectively. There's nobody who says this is what pagans are, or this is what pagan is. So it's not really like we can say like pagan is, you know, a religion. However, I think as well there is possibly, like, I'm not trying to rouse you or accuse you or anything like that. I'm sure you didn't mean any harmful intent in what you've asked here, but it does sort of speak to a kind of like spiritual superiority, as though like paganism is somehow like beyond the faults of other religions. And I certainly don't think that that's the case. You know, like all the things that you see that are bad in other religions, they happen in paganism too. You know, it's just that we're such a small minority. That's why you don't really hear about it as much. Actually, an interaction that I had recently comes into mind. I met a man who was part of a Satru, and he introduced it, I'm part of a Satru, but we're not the white supremacist ones, you know, and like, so the fact that that's like a disclaimer he had to make, like, really tells you that like paganism is not above the issues that other religions are facing. They still have, you know, racism, they still have abuse cycles that happen within them, and all those sorts of things, like, they still happen. We're not above that in any way just because we're pagan. And I think that only a fool would ever say, like, oh, they're pagan, so they must be trustworthy, because that's certainly not the case. You know, we're just as dodgy as anyone else. Like I say, though, I think the sentiment behind this is really beautiful. Like, how can we be better? How can we grow? How can we do better, and be, you know, that moral pillar? And I think that's a really great sentiment to have, but it's, honestly, I don't know that it's something I can comment on. Like, I don't have that philosophical understanding of these things, you know, and I'm never sure if I'm really left-leaning as I think I am, and, you know, like, so I do have a lot of social programming and all that sort of stuff, just like everyone else, so I don't know that I can really say, like, this is what we should do, and this is how we're gonna get to the point where we're gonna be the best religion and the most moral and upstanding religion. I think, though, that, like, on an individual level, the intent should always just be, like, not to bring yourself or the craft or paganism into bad light. I think that if you're pagan, you know, do your best to be a law-abiding citizen. You know, don't bring it into bad light. Like, don't be out here sacrificing children or anything. Like, you know, just like Thorn Mooney always puts it really beautiful when she says, don't be a dick. And I think that that's just like the borderline of it, isn't it? Like the baseline of it. Like, just don't be a dick and just be a good person, and that's the best way of moving forward on an individual level, I think. So, like, as a collective, it's too hard. Like, we don't agree on what a pagan is, what paganism means, because it's so individual. And I think that every time that we've, like, had, like, a witches' council or anything like this, they've always failed, because we're so autonomous. We don't like that, God, what's the term I'm looking for? Authoritarian approach. Like, a lot of people who move into paganism as well are moving out of very authoritarian religions, and they smack at that, you know? Like, they don't want a priest telling them what their religion is and what they should do. So, like, that's the need that it meets for them. So I think that, like, having, like, a collective term of paganism and what that means and how we can be the best religion and what, you know, we should do, I think, as beautiful as your sentiment is, I don't think it's something that can really be accomplished or spoken of by me in this kind of format at least. So yeah, I think that's all that I should say on this topic. I'm kind of getting to a point where I'm rambling now, so a short video from me, but I hope that it has somewhat answered your question or given you my perspective on this topic. So yeah, I hope you're all well, and until I speak to you next time, mwah, bye!